Big Bad Wolf hadn't been made yet. So they left because Revolt was closed the day of Revolt. That was a coaster built by Aero Development a long time ago. One of the special things about this ride is that there are many ways they pay homage to the Big Bad Wolf, which is kind of why people were kind of upset about them making a brand new ride named after it. But this bridge area and the track from the top of that bridge all the way back into the station follows the exact same footprint that the original Big Bad Wolf did back to the station. Those footers are not the exact same footers, but they're in the exact same spot the original footers were for Big Bad Wolf. And that is the same story all the way back up into the station. You can kind of tell that it's a little bit of a janky track situation because when you're coming back up into the station, there's kind of G-forces that you normally wouldn't feel, but it's just something Busch Gardens wanted to do to kind of pay homage to that roller coaster since it was beloved by everybody. And y'all might be wondering, well, why did they close it if everybody liked it so much? And that's just because Aero went out of business late 90s, early 2000s, depending on who you ask. And you know, when a company goes out of business, they don't make parts for your coasters anymore. And the only way you can get parts for your coasters is if you buy them secondhand off of another park that closed one of those rides, or if you make them yourself. And both options are very expensive, and we did not have enough money at the time to keep that thing running. So we'd rather just build an entirely new ride that had never been done before than keep spending money on that. We are a theme park, so we like to theme all of our rides. Every coaster that is in the Oktoberfest area is typically the best themed ride in the park. And they kind of continued that tradition with the Big Bad Wolf when they opened that, thank goodness. But this coaster by far is the best themed one. This one has its own story and everything around it too. It's just supposed to kind of tell you that either Gunther is doing this of his own free will or his mind is being kind of poisoned by the Black Forest. There are 3 themes for this ride, especially when you're getting into the building. You can either have the forest spirit, who's kind of like an angry forest spirit who's like, why are you in my forest? Get out. And she'll attack you with her vines and everything. There's also the Big Bad Wolf, so there will be a pack of wolves and then one big wolf that comes up to attack you guys. And then there's a really big thunderstorm, which is just a lot of thunder and lightning and flashing lights and everything. And that is the 3rd theme for this ride. So it's kind of just a funny little... Yeah, this is actually before Disney bought Star Wars, but around a different way. A stationary position, so it'll happen, but just in case.
You shouldn't tie it. Yeah.
Wow. It's musty.
The very first horizontal drop track in North America. So there was one prior to it in Europe, but we were the very first one in North America, so it was really special for us to be able to do that. There are a few others now, I think about 4 or 5 others. Most notably is Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure in Universal Studios Orlando. However, since we were the first, we also have the best one because ours is taller and it is a non-assisted free fall. So we have no brakes when our drop track drops. It is free fall for a good an entire second. So it feels like it's a lot more violent than the other drop. When they were repairing this ride for those past few months, just to make it easier for them to actually work in here. They will be putting it back up soon. I just don't know when that will be. So it is a kind of unique ride experience right now in which you will be able to... Today, Alpengeist statistically is the most intense ride in the park because you have the most amount of sustained Gs. But here you pull 3 Gs, which is what a fighter pilot does. And the whole reason Zero is able to get away with that is when you begin to lose your vision a little bit, you think it's your eyes adjusting to the dark. So that is one reason why we are not allowed to ride this ride with the lights on unless there's obviously an emergency. We were doing lights on rides with Dark Coaster, and a lot of people wanted us to do lights on rides here. absolutely, I would have loved to do that, but Zier just doesn't want us doing it. Same way that B&M doesn't want us standing at the top of Griffin doing tours anymore. But if you come over here, I can kind of show you why it's so intense. The whole point of this is to disorient you and kind of make you feel like you have no idea where you are. That is the entire point of this building. It's supposed to be like you are whisked into the Black Forest and you are being attacked by something, chased by something, watched by something. That's what it's supposed to be. Orient you. They have this giant circle in the middle of this helix here that's basically a projection of the moon. And they have it at the bottom of the helix at an angle to make it feel like you're actually upside down or being thrown around. Why did they turn off the lights? Oh. Can you go get the lights, Dory? Forgive me, don't freak out. At least the pathway lights are still on. About 45 mile an hour. You come down, then back around and go directly into the bottom of the helix, and you're going up at the same time that you're going through at about 30 mile an hour, which is pretty fast, which is why it allows you to feel those kinds of forces. That's forward. So right now they're in the process of putting trains onto the track, so they'll be cycling a few trains in a little while. The station and in the right areas surrounding the station like this. This is launch 1 and 2 coming in and out of the building. In here are all the cameras inside of the building, which is why they're infrared. Into thinking that ride restraints can open whenever they want to. That is not the case. You have to either have a power source or an air source. There is no power sources or air sources anywhere else on the track except for the. So obviously, you guys are here right where the drop track is. So if you look up, that's the piece of track that goes down. So you can see how we have a good 6-7 feet of just straight free fall, and then you start to get into the magnetic brakes. All of the other drop tracks in the United States are fully braked, so you never actually get a full free fall feel. Smooth stop. Hopefully they turn on the ride and send trains while we're in here. So you can kind of see this rig a little more. I haven't even handed the ride over to. So this right here is the evacuation gate for when the track is in its drop state. So there is a catwalk attached to the drop track. So where the track drops, if we need to get people off the ride, the catwalk aligns with that right there. So you can kind of see that it's a pretty good distance that you fall. So you can kind of see when you're up here the different themes that they've got. So they have these branches here and these like leaves that kind of. So you come in here and you slow down right to a stop. And as you're rolling through here, you're getting those themes. So for the Bad Wolf and his wolf pack with you, so you'll come into the building, and then you'll hear a wolf howl. That's how you know that you've got this that theme. And then you come up into here, and then you'll start hearing them growling and barking at you. I think it's really funny that they decided to go for that like full authenticity thing. Again, this is another place to get evacuated and keep it a big secret. You guys all good? So it was a very special proprietary piece that they had to get custom made and then delivered to us from Zier in Germany. So that's why it took forever for it to get here, forever for them to make it, forever for us to install it. It is that kind of idling at the very top that attaches to the track. There was a small crack in it, literally a hairline fracture. That was discovered during this ride's maintenance cycle, which is why it was at the beginning of January when they saw it. So there was nobody on the ride. In fact, it actually showed up that day. So there's nobody on the ride. There would have been nobody on the ride for those 3 weeks anyway. It's just a really unfortunate thing that happened. And obviously it's replaced now. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to have to wait a little bit so you can actually see the track. verboten means forbidden. And you know, we're going to Black Forest, which is taboo. It's a forbidden place for most folks.
Verboten.
So they took that word and then added the word bolt to it because we have linear synchronous motors as our launches here. So these are basically, it's basically electromagnets that turn on and off in a certain order. It is a big rail gun and you are the projectile. It is attached to that. Since it was kind of old, they didn't have ride computers or like spiels to tell you what to do. So when the ride dispatched, they would ring a really big bell. And as they're ringing that bell, you're leaving the station. That's what they've got in the new station now. If you're operating the ride, you either have the opportunity to ring that bell. If you don't ring the bell, the ride system plays a bell noise anyway. That is why they're...
Welcome back. Once the ride comes to...
Is that your favorite? I'm not going to go to war with these people.
Lift up your arms and exit carefully to your right, taking all personal belongings left in the bins.
In fact, I encourage you to look at them, but you just can't take pictures or videos of it. But other than that, this is kind of like a little interactive ride on the train. They do a kind of minimal track walk as well, just to make sure that there's nothing with no trees laying down on the track, especially after like a night of a storm or something. And then, you know, they check all their trains, make sure everything is inspected and proper on those. And then when they take off the green tag, it's red. Red means stop, green means go. Very simple thing. Third click on these restraints. These are actually officially locked in. They cannot be taken back out. And no matter how much force you push through it, it will not open back up. So when you get those 3 clicks, here's 1, 2, and 3. So that third click shows that these restraints are actually locked in. When this ride opened, it did not have a computer system to actually tell people what specific seats are locked in or anything. Now we do have that, but when they opened, they didn't have that kind of technology. I call them a seat belt. It is not really a seat belt, it's just a belt that is on the seat. These do nothing for your safety. That is why you can take them on and put them on and take them off while the ride is actually operating. I do not recommend you do that though, especially on this ride, because you know that's seeing it around down there. That will hurt your legs. But this is just so the ride crew and the station knows that you're restrained by your third click, because this will not go into this clip here unless you have 3 clicks on your restraint. So if I take this, obviously it goes down more. But if 2 clicks instead of 3, so 1 and 2, that belt is nowhere close to that, and that's how they know if you can fit or not. So the ride adjusted seats on this ride go to about 2 clicks. They still have 3, but in reference to this seat, they only go about 2 clicks up, and they have 2 seat belts on them that are a little bit longer to accommodate larger guests. I lock in, so that's the third click. That means that green one is in. If I do anything else, it just goes back around the circle. And then when I unlock this, on this ride, it supplies an air supply to this, which moves over the the ratchet barrels, and that opens up the restraint again. There's a pneumatic cylinder here just to open the restraints for you, so you guys don't have to do it when the restraints are. There's nothing special about this. Same thing with these magnets here. These are rare earth magnets. There's no electricity or power supply to these in any way to make them more magnetic than they already are. And these use eddy currents to slow down the trains coming through. These braking systems will always give you about 2/3 of the energy that you put into it back to you. So the more work that you put in, the more work it gives back to you. Which means that feeling, I will go red in the face, pushing as hard as I possibly can, and it will always move at that constant speed. But if you kind of could, it's called an anti-roll that dog, but it kind of looks like that. So when we're going up the hill, this is that noise you're hearing. If the chain happens to break or ride power gets cut, this is what holds the train where it is so it does not roll back. That's why it's called an anti-rollback. So let's say you're going up the hill and then the chain breaks, you lock back into place, you're not going anywhere. So this is just another one of the safety systems. So if they have to e-stop the ride while you're on the lift hill, you don't roll back. Also, so the weight is not supported on the chain, because compared to this, the chain is very flimsy and fragile. So here I have another piece of chain from the Loch Ness Monster. and this here is the chain dog. So this is what hooks onto the chain. So if you hear that really loud rattling noise right as you roll onto the chain, that is this. So your train is rolling onto the lift hill, you hear this noise, and then it locks in once your train reaches the same speed that the chain is moving. Now in the Loch Ness Monster, there is a very loose chain tensioner, which is why when you roll onto that lift hill, you go onto it and then you kind of go backwards a little bit and then go forward again and then backwards again. That's just because of that. It's an older technology. This is from the Loch Ness Monster. So these are not original ones. These are from the Premier Rides redo. So this one is a brand new one. This one has not been used yet. So I have my very scientific precision machined piece of plastic here that tells me whether or not these wheels are okay to use. So that doesn't fit, right? So if this doesn't fit, this wheel is okay to use. We can continue to use this. If it's been running for a really long time and we need to replace a wheel, it fits on this one. So this one cannot be used anymore. We can retread wheels, so you can send them off to a shop to get them retreaded. We haven't been doing that as often because we've found that it's easier to just get newer wheels than to get them retreaded. With the Loch Ness Monster, it's a little bit different because that ride is, you know, the manufacturer for that ride is defunct. They don't exist anymore. So for that, we kind of like to get those, our two original road wheels from the Loch Ness Monster. So these still have the Aero Development stamp in these wheels and their serial numbers. So these are pretty big pieces of history. These were at the ride when it first opened in 78. So 78, so these are pretty old. But these are really cool. This one hasn't been used, this one has, which is why it's discolored and you can see yellow paint from the track on it. These are really cool pieces of history. We can run 3 trains on them, we just do not, because we don't really need that much ride capacity. B&M coasters already have really good ride capacity anyway. So we take advantage of that and leave one train dismantled during that train's off season. So we take basically an entire year to dismantle a train, inspect every last piece down to the very last bolt, and then we put it all back together. Everything goes back together to spec and everything, and once everything has been inspected by our maintenance crew, they will put this train back out on track and then take one off the track and put it in gear and start that process over again. It doesn't take an entire year to do that. Like if they were actually attempting to go very fast and go through it, their wheel carriages are not resting on the track. So obviously, on the wheel carriages, they still have the road wheels attached, but the road wheels are the wheels that ride on top of the train, on the top of the track, because it's like riding on the road. The ones at the bottom are the upstop wheels, so when you go upside down, you stay on the track, and the ones at the side are the guide wheels because they keep you on. We actually had 9 rows on it. And then we realized that the front row was far too intense for people to ride comfortably. So we took the seats off of our front row and made this a 0 car. So now this allows the train to go through the course at a slower pace than what originally was there. So nobody gets hurt on this ride and nobody feels too uncomfortable on this ride. You will regularly hold at about 2.7 G throughout the duration of this ride, which is why statistically it is the most intense ride in the park. Also because it goes upside down 6 times. You will never feel like you're coming out of your seat on this ride. That is the only upside to that. A lot of people really don't like airtime feelings sometimes, but this ride, the whole point of it is to squish you down into your seat, which is why if you leave a little bit of spacing or restraint when you're in the station because you kind of want to feel a little bit looser, every time you come back into the station, the restraint is always tighter than when you left it. But a lot of people like to Photoshop a row of seats onto this coaster and then move them off the front of the 0 car a little bit to make it look like a row of seats has fallen off the ride, so they can put that as their thumbnail on their YouTube video. Ready?
Please step quickly and carefully into the seats directly in front of you.
And over here. So obviously we are underneath the Lift Over Griffin. This ride was the very first of its kind. It's the world's first floorless dive coaster. And they were like, yeah, we can do that, except the trains are going to be a little too heavy. And you're like, well, is there anything you could take off to make it lighter? And they were like, the floor. So we were like, yes, please, because that is something that we can sell. So in addition to having a higher ride capacity than other dive coasters at the time, we also had no floor, which is why SheiKra very difficult to evacuate a ride that does not have a floor on it. So whenever this ride breaks down, they will do their very hardest to not evacuate you. They do not want you to be 205 feet in the air and have to, deploy all the floors, attach you to a harness, and then walk you down 205 feet of stairs. Because the only time we use the gondola to bring you down is if you have ride accessibility accommodations. If you don't have ride accessibility accommodations, you have to walk down those stairs. So, if there is an outage and we do have somebody on the ride with ride accessibility accommodations, this gondola is on its own power grid, so we can just turn on that diesel generator, bring it up to the top, load people on, and then need to go down. Actually can't walk down them stairs, which, in my opinion, is most people. So, I also don't. I love coasters. I'm not afraid of heights or anything. I am not walking down 205 feet of stairs. Again, right now there is not much to show you in here. So right now, dive coasters don't necessarily need to have 3 rows, but we wanted as much capacity as possible. So we added a third one onto this one, which is why in a little bit I can go outside and show them to you guys. We're repainting a system that ties this into just a big chain at the very top that moves very slowly. And then after you're hanging there for about 6 seconds, the chain speeds up to its highest speed and kind of throws you off the edge. That's why you get a little bit of air time as well going over that hill. What happens is when you get up there, there's a really loud clicking noise. That's the reverse chain dog locking into place on that chain. That's looped. So in this area right here, there's a chain dog facing the other way that will just drop out, hook onto that chain, and then once the chain throws you off, and you go through that Himmelman loop, the chain dog locks back into place by itself. It will only be open again when that electrical signal is, and they can't use it anymore, so they just decided to give it to us, and they wrote tour wheel on it, so it's a really cool thing that the maintenance team likes to do for us. But here they can kind of use this area for storage, but mainly this is a place for them to park the second train. Whenever the train's off the track, they put one inside and then one outside. But this is also an outdoor area for the maintenance team to use whenever they're painting their body panels. So they're going to be repainting these body panels to go back onto that train in a little while. I think about a week or two is what they told me. And this is where they do all of the painting. Right here are those water breaks I was telling you guys about. So actually not that heavy. What happens is these attach to the bottom of the train. The water gets collected out here and then gets shot out the top right here. That literally just diverts energy from one portion of the train, hamster tail, over by where the water is. You can hear it echo a little bit, but that one over there, any support that has to experience a large amount of force, meaning that it has more vibrations, will vibrate more, and whenever you have vibrations in a hollow tube, it starts to resonate, and that's what makes that roaring noise. So, I was talking about how much supports move earlier. If you look really closely at this
Whoa!
here, you can see it wiggling back and forth.
Both of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is all of them. So on a windy day, just imagine what that looks like from back here. That does play into the design for these coasters. They have to design that for the wind as well. So I'll tell you guys about that emergency chain that they have to use to bring the train. So when they ton of new theming to this coaster. They kind of actually give it a purpose. This is one of those things. So they added this shack right here. The guy that's to craft wash is Jordan, and that's meant to be. You assume that the Loch Ness Monster found a previous, boating craft, beat it up, and then threw it back at you. That's why there is this little train right here that is actually kind of beat up. We got theming to go at it with a sledgehammer. That's how the lift tools work, because this might not look the same, but it operates the same exact thing way on any other Priscilla part. But right now it's kind of in a power saving mode, so it's moving at a slower pace, but it's not stopped, because it's easier to speed up an object that is already moving than it's stopped. That'll keep down maintenance costs, that'll keep down like extra power costs and everything. And then once they dispatch a train, the train will speed up really fast. So you speed up, and then when you get up to the train, that
Wow.
Okay, so again, we can take pictures and videos of anything in here except for the blueprints. So we have blueprints for the trains, parts for this ride. Now, we are, on good terms with most other theme parks in the area. So what we have been trying to do recently is get parts from other aero roller coasters like this whenever those parks take them down. Icon and King's Dominion, they had some spare restraints that they could give us. That's what these are. They also gave us some spare chassis, but that's not what these are original chassis. So they didn't have drive tires, and they didn't have, launches. They didn't have anything to actually propel the trains. So they had to use gravity for everything. So that is why above us, you could tell that from one end of the station to the other, this kind of little shroud right here is actually where the track is in the station. You can kind of see that it slopes downward from one side to the other. That's because the only thing slowing your train down is friction brakes. As soon as those friction brakes go, gravity will roll your train out of the station for you. So we don't need anything that actually powers the ride besides the chains to actually move the trains around, because everything that we have here for all of our emergency stops are all gravity fed. So you can hear those really loud clicking noise. Those are those friction brakes activating and deactivating really quickly to kind of slow the train down smoothly. Before this coaster was operated by a central computer, it had to be done by one guy in the operating booth, and basically he had to hit those, friction brake button at the very perfect timing. And if they messed up, you guys got to go around again for free. So let's say that he's watching that as the ride is about to operate, and you could see that linkage moving across and from side to side. That's just those gates opening and closing. That's where trackers can move and open and unload trains off the track. From there, down into here is a pretty steep slope that it goes down to, because you have to go from up there down to here. There's one on both sides of this maintenance station, because there used to be another one of these tracks on the other side. You can kind of see that there's two doors over there at the end. You can kind of see that they just took the other one out to have extra space, because they didn't park the trains down here anyway, because it took them too long to get them back out. So they just leave them outside. This one does also have 3 trains. You can run it on 3 trains. We're just doing the same rule about how we like to leave one disassembled and being inspected, while the other 2 are running on the track. So if you guys want to come out here, we can kind of demonstrate. I have an example of how our friction brakes work on this coaster. These brakes use air to open and close them. These brakes are closed in their default state, so if we lose air or if we just lose power in general, the brakes are always activated, meaning that we can stop the ride whenever we want to. However, when we supply air to them, they open up. So whenever you're coming back into the station or through a brake run throughout the ride, if you're hearing really loud clicking noises and air noises, that's this opening and closing really fast. The way this coaster was designed is just to have one big brake fin down the center underneath the train. That's how this track is designed. You can see right here is where a place where this was welded together. and they only needed to grind it down up here on the side and underneath of it. This is another